Ready when you are. Cool. Okay. Cool beans. How's your day? What do you do? That's cool. Yeah, I think there are some benefits of being in an office, but they are, in general, massively outweighed by all of the negative aspects. By which I mean the people that you have to see in the office. So some kind of one day a week seems like a normal one.
Hello everyone, welcome to Blizzard Comedy Profiles. Thank you for joining. I just realised throughout that entire thing I just had Cerys' side of the conversation playing and not mine. So like neither of them were meant to be playing. So Slappy Vs only just heard cool beans out of context, and then your response to like what I was saying, which would have made absolutely no sense. So we might as well start the podcast. I don't know if you really call it a podcast when you're doing it live in this format, but you know what I mean. So yeah, I am joined by the magnificent comedian, scientist, and queer Cerys Bradley. And who you may have seen on our last Blizzard Comedy Broadcast Avalanche show. If you didn't, that is on our YouTube channel, which I will plug. In fact, yeah, I'll get all the links in the chat now. Cool, yep, you can find it on there. But don't watch it now, because we're going to be chatting about comedy for the next hour, so hang out here first, and then go watch it afterwards to contextualise everything we've been talking about. So, Cerys, how are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. For a Wednesday, I've been drinking wine for an hour, so...
Oh, fantastic!
Really
I was good today, actually. I usually drink on these, but no, I've been... It's been that hot, I've not wanted to leave the house, and we've not had any in, so that's the main reason why I'm just on water. I think we do have some gin in the fridge, but not really anything to go with it, apart from, like, maybe like a 2-week-old bottle of tonic that will be flat by now, so I'm behaving.
We're lucky enough to have a balcony, so sat out on the balcony, had a glass of wine.
Oh, that's lovely.
Felt very bougie.
Lovely indeed. Who is it you're living with? Is it family, friends, partner?
I'm very lucky that it's just me and my partner.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
We moved in together like March-ish 2019.
Okay,
so
cool.
Had like settled into a routine when we discovered that we were going to be locked in together for a year and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely. I think half of my mates have broken up over lockdown, and the half who've stayed together, I'm like, yeah, no, I think these ones are probably going to work out. I think if you've not broken up over lockdown, you're probably good to go. Either that or something incredibly abusive is going on, which is not funny, so I won't go into that. But so either you'll be really.
Let's turn the corner very quickly.
Yeah, it did. I realised that's what I was saying. It. Like, I didn't want to further convince anyone who is stuck in a bad relationship that because they've stuck with it so far, they should just carry it out, because that is not good advice, and I don't want to be spreading that kind of harmful rhetoric. But what
I'm just going to jump in to stop your spiral.
Yeah, please do. That would be great.
Yeah, because we like I think 2 months into lockdown, we're joking about how we'd already spent more time in lockdown than we had in the rest of our relationship put together. Like we were definitely too busy, and when we weren't living together, we were like happy if we saw each other one weekday evening a week and one weekend a month. That was kind of our like routine. And so we probably went from basically being long distance but in the same city to getting to spend every waking moment together, which it's been really nice. It's been really lovely being able to have lunch with my partner every day.
Absolutely is,
and
this is why I'm not looking forward to having to go back into the office and that kind of thing, because it is going to be harder to find the time. I mean, luckily my partner just kind of freelances stuff, so they are in the house a lot of the time. So that's one thing. If we both had jobs, we'd probably never see each other. So that would be.
Sorry, speaking as a freelancer, did you just basically say that your partner's freelance job is not a job?
No. I didn't mean like that. I mean,
was that what you were trying to imply?
That wasn't what I was trying to imply. And I have another job as well. But no, yeah, that wasn't remotely what I was trying to imply. I realised how that came out, but no, I couldn't think of another way to phrase it. But no, yeah, freelance work actually is work, but they don't have to leave the house to do their job. There we are. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Got there in the end. Wonderful. Anyway, so comedy. That's what we're going to be chatting about. So just to kind of kick this off, quite a broad question. So don't overthink trying to get the exact answer for this. But could you tell us some of your earliest memories of sort of discovering comedy as something that you enjoyed? So not like wanting to perform it, but just something that you enjoyed consuming. If you did, I know some comedians absolutely hate comedy, which is wild to me. But there we are.
I do remember. I remember. Basically, the way that I kind of got into comedy was through things that my mum bought my dad that my dad didn't want.
Okay.
So my mum's her basis throughout most of my kind of like childhood, my mum's basis for Christmas presents was DVDs. She would just buy like dozens of them for each of us, even though most of the stuff that she was buying was not stuff that we like mentioned that we wanted. And she bought my dad, one year she bought him the Goodies box set.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which for your younger listeners is was like a sitcom like from ancient times.
It is, yeah.
And so I remember watching that and thinking that funny, but I think that I mostly wanted to find it funny because my mum bought it for my dad. And then I was, oh yes, I remember this. I thought this was funny. And so I remember watching it, like wanting to think that it was funny because my dad and I did not have very much in common.
Right.
And so it would be like a thing that we could, talk about.
Over, yeah.
And then my dad went to see Bill Bailey live because a friend of his had tickets and then someone meant to have the ticket dropped out. And so they took my dad, which we all thought was very funny because Bill Bailey's obviously a musical comedian. Dad has no interest in music whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then because he went to see Bill Bailey live, like if you express any kind of interest about anything in front of my mum, just like one time, she will leave that thing for the like rest of time. So my partner, the first time that she came to meet my parents, like at my parents' house, my mum cooked a ham and Amanda made the mistake of being like, oh, this is a nice ham. And now every time Amanda goes home, my mum will cook a ham every single time. Single time. If we go home like 4 times of the year, we will eat 4 hams. It is ridiculous.
And I guess you can't really say anything about it now because then you have to then you have to like imply that you didn't like it that much the first time, even though that's not necessarily the case. But that sounds stressful.
Yeah, she really she'll get something into her head and then that's her love language is repeatedly giving you a thing that you offhand mentioned that you kind of liked a little bit a million years ago. But because my dad went to see Bill Bailey and then my mum basically bought him every comedy DVD that Bill Bailey had ever made, and so I watched all of them and I thought Bill Bailey was very funny. He was my first like proper comedic crush. And went to see him live in Bristol and watched all of his DVDs, and I think that was kind of where my first kind of conscious like getting properly into comedy started.
So I really, this is entirely irrelevant. But I'm just curious. Do you know what tour they went to see with Bill Bailey? Because I know my parents also had the same. But I think they went to go see Part Troll, which is one of my favorite.
I was going to say
it's the
one with the hair. I think it was Part Troll.
Yeah,
I think it was.
I think that was like the first like arena one he did.
Yes. Yeah.
Like early 2000s. I can't remember the exact year.
Like,
yeah, this is entirely not relevant, but I'm just want to be a bit of a nerd.
I think it was Pot Troll, which is the one where he does the joke, got like all the tattoos of all the things in
that
forests.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's either Part Troll or Tinsel Worm, but I think Part Troll.
Yes, it was Part Troll.
Yeah.
If those are the two options,
then
Part
it was
Troll's
definitely
the early one. It was Part Troll.
I get them mixed up in my head because the two which I've watched the most. That's really cool. So, you mentioned Bill Bailey being kind of one of your first kind of, you said kind of comedy crushes, but in terms of like comedians you enjoyed, are there any other kind of sort of important names that really kind of helped you fall in love with the medium, to put it in a very wanky way?
Well, so it's obviously like it's a shitty thing to admit in this particular day and age, but I went from Bill Bailey to Black Books.
Right, and
then
same to be honest,
Books.
When I started with Bill Bailey's solo stuff, I hadn't heard of Black Books until like about a decade after it was made.
So apparently when my mum was pregnant with me, I think the timeline works with that. She used to watch Black Book, so I'm going to claim that I was like on it in the womb. But that might have just been an excuse because I wanted to watch it with her and she was like, oh no, I watched it when I was like pregnant and now I can't do any of the things that I did when I was pregnant because they all make me feel morning sickness. So she may have just been lying, so she wants to watch Black Books with me. But
quite possibly,
so I went from Bill Bailey to
I think it started
Dylan
in like 2000,
Moran.
so I don't know. I don't actually know how old you are. So.
Oh no, well then
yeah.
No, then
I
that's
assumed you were
incorrect.
older than that. But,
she was wrong.
Yeah.
Yes. much older than that.
Might have been like Space
okay,
or something if it was
just...
like a sitcom that Bill Bailey was in. He was in a couple episodes of that. I don't
Yeah,
know.
she was not cool enough for Space. I don't think it was Space.
Not?
I think
No.
she must have watched it when my brother and I were like kids then.
Yeah.
And so she doesn't associate it with the trauma of pregnancy. She associates trauma of having to raise young children. But yeah, so from there got very, very into Dylan Moran. And then when I was younger and like properly getting into stand-up, my tastes were quite mainstream. So I was really into John Richardson.
Okay, yeah.
Because he used to have a BBC Radio 6, the music channel. He used to have
did he? I didn't know that, yeah.
radio show on that, which I think it was Russell Howard and John Richardson, and then it was John Richardson and I forget his name now. He does like political stuff, which isn't very interesting. But anyway,
my brain's jumping to like Russell Brand, but I don't think that's who you mean.
I think it was Matt someone. He does like I can't remember. He's
not Mark Watson, is it? Because I know he does a lot of radio stuff. No, it doesn't matter. This isn't a show that we're just bitching about comedians we don't like.
But yeah, so I used to listen to, because they used to podcast his BBC radio show, and so I used to listen to that quite a lot. And he's like, he's a pretty like mainstream comic, but on the radio show he talked quite a lot about his kind of more like obsessive tendencies, and I think we have similar kind of relationships with food in terms of how we eat food. And I remember him doing a bit on the radio show about how he was eating a fruit salad and he was really disappointed because he saved like a chunk of apple until last, because when he was eating the fruit salad he looked at it and was like, that's going to be the nicest bit of the fruit salad, and so I'm going to save that until last. And then he ate it and it was like really mealy and really watery. So disappointed.
It ruins the
that
whole
is
meal.
Also how I eat. It's how I eat my food.
Yeah.
And so I like really connected him on his weirder stuff. And then he wrote a book, which I remember my mum bought me his first kind of memoirish book, which I think was meant to be a comedy, but you read it and you're like, this person needs, like, I hope they're okay. Like, he sounds really
that does
sad.
sound like most comedy memoirs I've read, yeah.
So yeah, I was really into him. And when I was in secondary school, when everyone was going to like and stuff in sixth form for we've finished school, let's go get drunk parties.
Right, yeah.
I took all of my friends up to the Edinburgh Fringe so that we could got to see John Richardson do a show, sit in the front row, talk to me about my shoes. It was very exciting. And we went there, and then all of my friends were like, oh, let's see if we can get into bars and have a nice time. And I was like, no, here is my very strict schedule, which is going to maximize the amount of comedy that we're going to see this 5 days that we're up there.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then I marched them all over Edinburgh to see all of these obscure comedians.
That's fantastic. So, do you know what kind of year about that would have been? Just trying to gauge who would have been
have been 2010 and 2011.
Okay, yeah.
When I was in year 12 and year 13.
Sure.
So.
Awesome, yeah. I think my first year was 2012. Who did I see when I was there? I remember that this was just as I was getting into doing stand-up myself, so I think I regret that I didn't really take any risks. I didn't go and see any of the more underground stuff. I only really, the smallest show I saw was Beck Hill's one, and that's because I'd met her from the open mics I'd done in London. And then I saw Tony Law's, I think it was his Maximum Nonsense show. And then other than that, it was just Alan Davies. I think I saw Paul Merton's improv thing. Oh, I saw Rhys Darby's show, which I still don't think he's released on DVD anyway, even though I'm sure I saw adverts for it, but I've not been able to find it anywhere, which is really gutting, because I really enjoyed that. So were you kind of dabbling in comedy at this point, or was this pre getting involved in that?
Yeah, so when I was 15, 16, a comedian called Natalie Haynes, who people might recognise from, she's got a BBC Radio 4 show now, which is all about Greek myths. So she came to my school and did a series of comedy workshops as part of this like youth comedy festival. So the idea was that you do the workshops and then there was like regional heats, and then there was a final at the Newbury Comedy Festival in 2009, maybe. And so I did that thing and made it through to the final, and then performed to, it was like a 200-seater auditorium or something like that, and there were like 8 people in there, and I bombed. It was terrible.
Is it possible to not bomb in that environment, a 200-seater with 8 people?
I remember, because I remember we had our regional heat. So our first regional heat, basically not enough people had entered the competition, so we all went through.
Oh, brilliant.
And then we had a second regional heat in Oxford, and my mum drove me, and I did the heat, and I like managed to hit the thing that you can get on stage where everything works, and you're like really like working with the audience, and it was really good. And I remember on stage being like, this is amazing. And that was properly I think that was probably where I was like, this is what I'm going to do forever now.
Okay, yeah.
And then we got home and my dad was about to go, and my mum was like, Cerys is actually, did not fuck it up. It was actually good. Like, it was actually entertaining. I think they all thought that I was gonna like, it would be like a nice thing that I did, but no one would enjoy. It would be like when I played flute in orchestra.
I'm proud of you for trying. Yeah.
Where, yeah. They would like come to my concerts, being like, this is very painful to experience. We have to do it because they are our kid.
Yeah.
But I remember. The gig was amazing and I did really well, and crucially not everyone did well. Like, I could tell the difference between how I had done and how the people who bombed had done.
Sure, yeah.
And I went through, which kind of like confirmed the kind of gut instinct. And then also my mum kind of begrudgingly admitting that I was actually like not bad at it. That was really exciting.
That is an iconic moment, yeah.
And then got to go through to the national final, which went terribly, and my nan came and it was all awful. But I remember telling a joke that people like applauded, and it was my first time. I mean, it was my third gig, but it was my first experience of people liking a joke that makes them want to clap as opposed to laugh.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, oh, applause. And then Natalie Haynes, who like mentored us, the whole thing, was stood in the wings, and then she laughed at my reaction to that, and then it completely threw me off, and then I just like lost it to the gig. But that was how I got into comedy, and I wanted to do lots more, but I grew up in a very small village in South Gloucestershire, and I know that there are lots of people who started comedy when they were like 16, like Josie Long and people like this who were like snuck their way into bars and stuff. But I literally grew up in the middle of like nowhere. Like, my village is surrounded by other villages and like the A46, which is the most dangerous road in the UK. You can't like, there's one bus that comes to my village. So you can either leave or you can arrive. You can't do both of those things on the same day.
Right. No.
It's not a place that I could really like go gigging.
No.
Yeah. And so I did like the Hawkesbury Upton Talent Festival with my comedy, and third place. Thank you very much.
Oh, nice. Was that the highest place that a comedian got, or what were the?
I was the only comedian in the
fantastic,
thing. It was all like it was like local bands and musicians mostly, and then there was a karate demonstration as well. I remember that. But yeah, third place, which was an achievement because the people who came above me had bigger families, and it was an audience vote, so it was a really big deal.
I suppose if you're in a band as well, and there's more of you. That's just
exactly, yeah. And I won £20. That was my first paid gig.
Not bad, yeah. I'm paid less for gigs. You were paid less for doing the show with us last week. So
it's all been downhill since then.
Absolutely. It's amazing. So so those were like your first times. Were they your first times on stage at all, or just in that kind of Yeah. Okay. So
well, I did like like primal pantomime type thing. Yeah. I also played Daddy Warbucks in my year 8 production of Annie.
Oh, nice. I would love to.
Believe it or not, people were surprised when I came out. That was that was the role that I went for.
Amazing. So it wasn't even like this is the role that's
so,
left over,
yeah.
and they'd miscounted like the genders that they thought at the time.
Well, so I went to an all-girls school, so
right. Okay.
I
Yeah.
went to an all-girls school. I
That'll be a
think
thing,
yeah, Daddy Warbucks may have been the only boy in our like male character in our whole production. I think we may have done everyone else as
I suppose pretty much.
Like,
yeah, he's the only. Yeah.
But I was like, no, I will put 2 liters of gel in my hair and slick it back. It will be great.
Oh, if you've got a picture of that, I'd love to see it. We don't need to broadcast it. Just like DM me at some point. Okay, so yeah,
just your own viewing.
Yeah, just my own. Trying to think of a word there that doesn't sound really creepy. Pleasure, enjoyment. No, yeah. No, it's a really creepy
also
request.
Went through that.
Yeah. So I guess what I want to know now then is how did you go from that to what were your next kind of steps in your comedy journey? Like where? So you were obviously in a small village. You couldn't really gig a lot there. Where did you go from there?
So I went to uni,
right?
Which I went to King's in London. That's where I because I actually I applied to lots of universities and I didn't get into any of the universities that I applied to.
Damn.
And I didn't look at any London unis, but then I got into King's. It was like a pre-clearing system where they had already been rejected from everywhere, and then universities that haven't had as many students as they were expecting apply for their places, like post for more applicants. And so I got into university that way. Which meant that King's, I hadn't even considered going to London. But yeah, came to London, and I was like, the thing that I was kind of really excited about going to uni was joining the Comedy Society. And so I joined the Comedy Society at King's. It wasn't big, but there were like some enthusiastic people, and we did like showcases, and we had an annual sketch show and stuff. Yeah. But we didn't go to Edinburgh or anything like that, and the only kind of connection to, you would think like going to a university in London, you could just like get straight onto the London comedy scene, but there weren't really, the people in the society didn't really have those kind of connections, so I didn't really do any of that. So I did a bit of sorry.
I was just going to say from my experience, like progression in London at the best of times is really difficult. There's like a thriving open mic circuit, and there's thriving professional gigs. It's very difficult to kind of get between the two. That's what I was going to say. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. So I did with my Comedy Society, and like was involved in I was like social, I think, in my second and third year. But the other thing that I did quite a lot of at university was competitive debating, which I realise is very nerdy, but it was fun. And it's basically if you want to participate in the good bits of sporting culture without having to play sports, it's a good thing to do at university, because you get to travel to loads of other universities and go to loads of other countries and compete and stuff. And so I did that, and I got okay at it. So I came to university thinking it was all going to be about comedy, and then debating kind of took over, and the comedy took a backseat, particularly in my second year when I was a bit more competitive. And so I kind of dropped comedy and wasn't performing very regularly. But then graduated, I went straight onto a postgraduate program. And so when I was doing my master's, I found out about there's a science comedy circuit in London where people perform stand up about their scientific research, and it's all over London and the UK now, and a lot of it was kind of created and is run by a guy called Steve Cross, who used to do the public engagement stuff at UCL, which was the university that I was at. And he has developed loads of programs where he kind of teaches academics how to talk about work through comedy. So people who are really bad at explaining their stuff to kind of the general public, he teaches them how to make jokes about it.
That's
and
really
then
cool,
they get better at explaining it. So he runs these science comedy gigs. So when I was doing my master's, I applied to do one of his gigs, and then when I was doing my PhD, I gigged quite a lot with him, and he got a bit of funding from the Wellcome Collection to run like a science communication development program for early career researchers. So I got onto that, which was my first kind of experience of like being in like a cohort, like a group of people who were trying to make stuff, and it was really fun because we got to experiment. So I like worked with someone and we just seen Hamilton, or just listened to the Hamilton soundtrack had just come out, so we wrote like a rap battle between Leibniz and Newton about who was the definitive creator of calculus, to explain that whole like feud thing. And you could like just make up whatever you wanted to kind of explain science to people, and it was really fun. So I really fell in love with comedy doing that. And then since finishing my PhD, I've been like kind of moving away from the science stuff and trying to get into more, I don't want to say conventional, because I don't consider my stand-up to be probably conventional, but like I think 2 years ago you would definitely put my comedy on the science communication side of science comedy, and now it's more on the comedy side. So that's been it's been my whole science comedy journey.
So I guess sort of moving from doing like science lectures with comedy to doing comedy that's obviously informed by who you are, including your interest in science.
I guess it's like moving, so you start off with like a slightly above average amusing science lecture to let's write a comedy show, but the point of it is to explain this type of science, to now I would say like I'm writing a comedy show which is not trying to teach anyone anything, and if you come to my show and you expect to learn something, you will be disappointed.
If you learn anything at this show, I'll beat you up afterwards.
I'm going to say I'll give you your money back. So it's like different approaches to audience.
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, it's still like, so I'm workshopping a new show at the moment, and a friend came to see it, and he pointed out at the end that like I just tell people like a lot of numbers in my show that I think is funny and interesting, and he's like, we didn't need to know any of those things. So there's still, it's still a bit sciencey.
I guess it's just how your brain will work. And I mean, like having a PhD in quite an academic subject, I guess it must be. I don't know. Yeah, is that a thing you struggle with? Like trying to strike the balance so you're not like talking down to people, but you're also not kind of overwhelming them with information. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a thing that I'm like trying to do really deliberately, where. So my first solo show, which was called The Invention of Lesbianism, and I performed it at the Green Man Festival and Brighton Fringe, and the show was about like the origins of queer language. So like, where does the word lesbian come from? Where does the word gay come from? And the kind of premise of the show was like, how do I decide what word to describe myself? I did my due diligence and I looked at the history of all of the words and weighed up all of my options. So it was a super nerdy show. And a friend of mine came to see it, and afterwards he was like, oh, it wasn't as preachy as I thought it was going to be. And those words have haunted me. So now the main thing that I'm worried about is like my audience is feeling as if they're being lectured to.
Yeah,
and it's something that yeah, exactly. And it's something that I've noticed like a lot more when I'm like watching shows, whether it's comedy shows or, like a sitcom or a film or whatever, or listening to a podcast. If I I really resent people trying to teach me things. I like for them to tell me their experience, and then I can go away and talk about it with my friends and work out what I think from there. So with the show that I'm developing at the moment, which is about sport and my experience as a sport, a big theme of that show is being non-binary and trying to play sport where like you have to have a gender to qualify for any kind of sport. And there's obviously like loads to be said about the treatment of trans sports people, trans athletes, and yes, athletes is the word. I like this. So the show is called Sportsperson currently, because I have a joke where I use the word sportsperson instead of athlete, on purpose.
And then you just forgot the word athlete.
Well, no, it's like it was meant to be like a derogatory, like it was meant to be like a jokey derogatory term, because the whole thing is a metaphor for people being homophobic. Because anyway,
spoilers.
Let's just ignore all the stuff that I was saying about trying not to be cheap. But that, like, I think it's a very funny joke. It's my favorite joke that I've written. I think it's very clever. I really like it. And there was like a video. Of performing it went online, and one of the comments was like, they're actually called athletes. How would you like it if you, as a gay person, if someone used a term like that you didn't like calling you gay, that's how athletes feel when you call them sports people? And I was like, yes, that is the point. Congratulations, you got the joke.
Amazing.
Anyway, there is a lot to be said about like how shit it is to be a trans person trying to play sport at the moment. But like, if you come into a comedy show, why would you want to hear about that?
Like, of course.
If you're coming to be entertained, you want to get away from that kind of thing. So like, it's kind of it's trying to find the balance where what I'm hoping to do with the show is that they can come and they can laugh at all of my disastrous attempts at trying to play sport and the very conflicting emotions that I have about both wanting to be like really strong and look like Michael Phelps and be like really tall and really athletic, and then also like simultaneously not wanting any of those things and really liking being like a very like, well, I'm like quite like a chubby, like my lower half is quite fat, and like I'm very proud of that, and I think it's very like sexy, and I think it's more attractive than Michael Phelps actually. And that's not true. Michael Phelps is, I think, the most
more
attractive
than
in
Michael
the world,
Phelps,
other
actually.
than my partner, obviously.
That's a good show title, though.
It's a running joke that every show that I go to, I have a little homage to Michael Phelps because I do genuinely think that he's gorgeous. But yeah, like I want just for the show to be fun and silly, and I think particularly during lockdown, my sense of humor has got a lot more surreal and it's got a lot sillier, and I have completely lost patience for you go see a comedy show and then you get 40 minutes in and then someone tells you actually something like there's a massive tone change and then you just hear someone's trauma and then you come out of the show feeling like shit about everything in the world. So that's not what my show is going to be. No. You leave the show, you get chocolate. That's how my show works. That is my antidote to that.
That's amazing. Yeah, instead of the personal bit at the 45-minute mark, just bribe the reviewers with treats. That'll
yeah, just hand out candy.
Hand it out. Yeah, amazing. Have you ever had anyone kick off at that? I don't know why they would, but I'm just wondering.
At the suites or at the
well.
No one has been. Everyone has been. I say everyone. Like, I've performed the show 3 times so far, and people's reactions universally to the sweets has been, "Oh my god, you've got a etc." in the bag. So one person was very surprised that there was like whole chocolate bars in the bag. They thought it was going to be like everyone gets a Skittle or something, and then. Or like one Pez. I bring a Pez dispenser and I tell you you're getting sweets, and that's all you're getting.
Oh. I saw. I did completely different tangent, but I went to B&M Bargains the other day, and I saw they've got. I don't know how old these might have been a thing for a while, but it's the first time I saw them. Is they've got like millionaires, but they're like little dispensers where all the flavors are separated. You can just like they've got little twisty handles on them that you could just dispense the ones you want. That's amazing. But I'm far too indecisive. I'll just let it sit there until like it was a really sunny day and it'll just melt it in the thing because I like those sweets because I get all the flavors without having to like decide which ones I want.
Okay, we are the opposite. We're the opposite because when I buy, like if I buy a bag of Skittles, the first thing that I do is open the packet and then I separate them all out.
Oh yeah, no, I can't do that because then I have to decide which ones I want to eat and which ones I want first and last, and This is why you need to have an order for every single food that you're going to eat. So basically, any meal that I sit down to, I know what that food is going to be consumed in, and I will eat all of my food separately in that order, and it will be the same order every single time. No decisions necessary. Yeah, I do. I think I kind of do that with meals, but not with like bags of mixed flavor sweets. Maybe I just maybe this will be my next step in in my evolution.
Everyone's gonna draw the line somewhere.
Yeah, it's not a conscious thing. I just for some reason that's just where I stop. No idea why. Yeah, so touched on a few things there that I want to kind of explore. So I'm going to rewind slightly. I just want to go back to your like first set. I'm not going to make you recite it. Don't worry. I just want to kind of ascertain like how different do you think you are now to the comedian that you wanted to be when you were starting?
So my first set was about my school bus and how it caught fire this one time when we were on the way to school.
Okay.
And for health and safety reasons, they could not let us off the bus because we were on the side of the road. And so we had to sit on this bus with like a great big plume of black smoke coming out the back of the bus. And we were like, the bus is on fire. Can we get on the bus, please? And the only reason why I did that set is because I didn't know what I wanted to write my material about. And there was another girl from my class who was in the comedy course also. And she was writing a set about the times that she has been on a school bus, and they were terrible. And so she was telling me stories about the school bus, her school rides being awful. And I was like, that's a story about buses. And then we went to this regional heat, and she told her bus story, and then I told a bus story. And so everyone would have been like, these two kids come from the same school, are also doing material on the same thing. And it was like, I mean, if I did it now, it would. I would think it was plagiarism, but it was like a different story.
No,
I just didn't have theme because I couldn't think of my own one, and then I did it better, obviously. But yeah, so it was very like, it was very live at Apollo. It was very observational. It was very here is a story that I'm telling you in a kind of outrageous way.
Sure.
But it was like, it's not like I didn't write any jokes. There wasn't anything. It was a funny story. There wasn't anything in there that you could be like, that is a joke. Yeah. Whereas at the moment I'm experimenting with props and like audio jokes, and because of the science communication stuff that I used to do, I like do a lot of PowerPoint kind of based jokes, which I really enjoy. And I think that my kind of like comedy world is a lot bigger, and my influences are a lot different, because before I was like, the things that I would watch would be Mock the Week, Live at the Apollo, Would I Lie to You. If it wasn't on BBC prime time comedy, I probably wouldn't have heard of it. And until I got to, so actually, in fairness, in sixth form I spent quite a lot of time on the Student Comedy of the Year YouTube channel. Stuff where you like sometimes get some interesting bits, but I never would have like dared to write stuff that wasn't like a story.
No.
Whereas now, I think I have a slightly different approach. I would say quite different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's definitely a trend. I don't know if there was any like kind of specific comedians you were kind of drawing from with that, or whether it is just like you say, the kind of like the stuff that gets on TV and Live at the Apollo is always that kind of more observational, anecdotal stuff. Like, it's definitely. I want to say that that's how I started trying to write, but I gave up before my first set. I realised that I was not remotely good at observational stuff. I would just end up repeating just Lee Evans bits, but without all the bits that Lee Evans does to make it good. So then I just tried to be Eddie Izzard, but also just fundamentally not understanding that you can't just say weird stuff without some kind of like.
It's a steep learning curve the first time that you really try
because I think you do even subconsciously you do try and emulate the people that you find funny, but as for me certainly not in a way where you've actually kind of sat down and researched and like tried to work out what makes their bits work. You're just like, this is funny. I can just I can just
the first time that this show that I've been working on during like lockdown, I did for the first time at the Camden Fringe, and I was in the middle of a bit, and the conscious thought that I had to myself whilst I was like performing this bit was, I sound a lot like Josie Long at the moment. I sound quite a lot like Josie Long.
Yeah.
Probably need to do something so that people don't think that I'm like a
We all have one of that. Yeah.
wannabe Josie Long.
Yeah.
I do really like Josie Long, and if you told me that
yeah.
I reminded you of Josie, I would take that as a massive compliment.
Yeah.
But if I'm, I don't want to sound like a, carbon copy.
No, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, I had that with Andrew O'Neill as soon as I discovered who they were, which was like within like the first couple of years of doing stand-up. And then because I didn't know who they were before.
I used to listen to Andrew O'Neill's when Andrew O'Neill did Pharmacist Botherer on BBC radio. Yeah, I remember. I used to spend a lot of time on BBC Radio.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Not going anywhere with that. Just
no, that's fine. Yeah, no. Yeah.
My childhood.
No, yeah, Radio 4 comedies, I think, are some of the... I never think of it as when I think back to my comedy influences, but I definitely spent a lot of time listening to the stuff that was on in like the kind of late 2000s, early 2010s. Bleak Expectations I remember really enjoying, which was a Mark Evans Dickensian parody that had like a lot of the same cast from Mitchell and Webb, but not Webb, thankfully. I don't know what the others are like. But,
So I don't know if you've watched any of Back to Life on iPlayer. The second season's just come out.
I do not have a TV license, so I do not watch anything on iPlayer. That sounds like I'm saying it for legal reasons. I don't know, but I genuinely, there's not been anything.
I think the first season of Back to Life. I think the first season of Back to Life is now on Netflix. If you have a Netflix,
I've got Netflix.
It's well worth watching. I watched it last year and was like, it is exactly my kind of TV show. I think to describe it as a sitcom, which some places are, is a misunderstanding of what that word means. But it is funny and it is a good show. But one of the writers on it is Laura Solon, and she had a sketch show on iPlayer that I used to listen to all the time. And because of that sketch show, whenever I think of the word rat, I cannot do it without thinking of it in the way that one of her characters on her sketch show said, because she had like a girl who used to say wats. There are wats everywhere, and now like I cannot disassociate.
That rings a bell. I think I've heard that actually. That specific. I don't remember any context of it, but that specific soundbite sounds very familiar to me. So.
Yeah, in the like when I was growing up, all we had was BBC, and then when iPlayer appeared, that was a like game changer. But I spent 90% of my time watching comedy or listening to comedy on iPlayer, and now too much choice, so I just rewatch Parks and Recreation.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Used to be Brooklyn Nine-Nine for me, and then the last series was just very underwhelming.
Don't say anything. We haven't seen it yet.
No, that's fine. I don't mean the one they're making now. I mean the last one they put on Netflix. But I will not spoil anything. Just that I found it slightly underwhelming. Nothing particularly significant to put me off. I just haven't watched it as much since then. And now it's just The Good Place. So it's just specifically Mike Schur's work, I think, because I think he was also Parks and Rec as well. So it's just jump between them. I've never seen his version of The Office. I really should, because I hear it's a lot better than our version, which is not difficult, but it's good to know. Right. Okay.
I have seen this, but I only watch it to the point where Pam and Jim get together, because I find it excruciating to watch, but I will watch anything if it has some kind of will they, won't they line, because that is all I'm looking for in a TV show or film. That's all I want. I don't care who they are. I don't care what the setting is. I don't care what kind of relationship it is. I just want a will.
You just want a will they, won't they?
Yeah.
Very, very. Simple needs, lovely. See, I know where like I say that I hate it, but make it slightly queer and I'll be all over it. Like any kind of romantic sitcom tropes. If it like I'll be like, oh, this is stupid, and then like make it queer and like, no, yeah, this is the best writing I've ever seen in anything ever. I forgot what I was going to ask next. Were you? I mean. Yeah, so when did you come out as non-binary or any kind of queer? Was that before you started stand-up, or was that kind of like after you'd already been doing it, and did coming out affect your kind of approach to it or your reception?
So I find it difficult to point at the time when I like properly came out,
Sure.
because what even does that mean?
Yeah,
so I've come out like a whole bunch. So normally what I with is the time that I came out to my parents,
Sure.
because that was like the big one.
Yeah.
And that when I came out, it went very funnily. It was like genuinely the perfect coming out, because there was enough tension for there to be drama, for there to be jokes, but ultimately they were very accepting.
Yeah.
And so like comedian's dream, I didn't feel bad about writing it, but I did get some good stories from it. And so that did change my comedy, because I started immediately, like genuinely came out, and then got invited as an alumni to come perform at a gig run by my comedy society when I was an undergraduate.
Sure.
Got drunk and went and then it was the first time I did my like coming out material to a bunch of teenage comedy boys who were all like, who the fuck is this person and what is this? And had a great time. And this guy who was the number of men that I have dated who wanted to date me and then were like, in order to impress you, I have done comedy, because obviously the way that I'm going to impress you is by doing this thing that you take really seriously and really love, and then like demonstrate that I'll actually do it better than you. And there was a boy there that I went on a couple of dates with who I was like, I'm gay now. I'm actually bisexual, but I did the classic, like, go hard or go home. You don't understand that, like, bisexual is not a stepping stone. It took me a long time to, like, go through the, like, no, bisexual is kind of like halfway house to gay is the full gay to actually bisexual is the full gay, which is where we're kind of at now. And at the time I was in the gay is the full gay stage, which I wouldn't be impressed if I was watching myself do those kind of jokes on stage now. That was the place that I was at. And it was very much a like mic drop kind of experience for me to be like, I was fucking queer the whole time. So that was when I came out as well as a random combination of bisexual and gay, depending on which. I mentioned my friend Steve, who does the science comedy stuff, and I remember having a conversation with him once where I was talking about bisexuality and how a friend and I were doing a comedy show about being bisexual at the Edinburgh Fringe, and he was like, I remember when you used to get really fucking cross if anyone suggested that you were bisexual because you were gay and that's what you wanted people to call you. And I was like, oh, I was a really bad baby. I was very like language policing when I did not have to be. I should just chill out. But anyway, so yeah, then I started writing, like I very comfortably, very confidently, immediately started writing comedy material about being bisexual or gay, whichever way the wind was blowing. Like really happy to talk about that on stage. And I came out as non-binary maybe 2.5, 3 years later, and that was a lot harder for me. And I came out as non-binary when I was doing my PhD, and I was having not a fun time doing my PhD it was. And then when I came out as non-binary to my research cohort, it was not fun. It was my birthday and I came out, and there was like one guy who was like, right, now I'm going to ask you a bunch of really invasive questions.
Obviously,
and then there was one who said like, yeah, and then there was this one person in my research cohort was like, well, it's not that complicated, is it? If you've got boobs, then you're a woman, like, and all this kind of nonsense.
So someone
and it was just...
in your science cohort?
Yes.
Amazing.
A scientist. Who also
doing a PhD?
Anyway, no, that's a whole other podcast. I will not. I could spend an hour complaining about the random shit that this person said. But anyway, I found it difficult, and I had some. It's not very fun having like pronouns that people have either never experienced before or wouldn't guess when they look at you if you're a comedian, because you have to have an awkward conversation with an MC at every gig that you do. And if a mic circuit, then you're meeting all these new people all the time, and then you go up to the MC and you're like, I don't know if it's going to be relevant when you introduce me, but my pronouns are they them. So if you're the kind of person who uses pronouns when you're introducing people, if you could do they them instead of she her, that would be great. Oh no, I can see that I've now already like confused and freaked you out, and you probably weren't even going to use pronouns like to begin with, and now I'm like completely in your head, and it's even worse for you. And so, and I had I had a bunch of like difficult experiences, and I never talked about it on stage. And then in 2019, did the Edinburgh Fringe with Rachel Wheely. We took a show up which was all about bisexuality, and I'll say as like a caveat that Rachel did some like work on herself during lockdown, went through a lot of things, and she now identifies as a lesbian as opposed to bisexual. But we had a great time at Edinburgh because we did a split bill show where I was like, hello, I have a girlfriend, and look the way that I do, and but I'm bisexual, I'm not a lesbian. And then she was like, hello, I'm a mum of 3 and I'm married to a man, and I was accused of being cool when I got off the train on the way to BiCon, but I'm bisexual. And that was like our show, and it was very fun. And when I was in Edinburgh that August, I got invited to do a trans non-binary takeover, where there was a venue at Edinburgh, and every Friday night they were doing a late show where all of the performers on the bill were trans non-binary. And this person that I'd never met before messaged me out of the blue and said, we're trans non-binary performers, do you want to do a set at this gig? And I was like, oh, this is my, first of all, this is my validation, because I've never met this person before, and they have like looked at who I am online, and then they've not like assumed that that they've taken me on my word, and they've like seen me as a non-binary person. But I was also like, I get up on stage, and then I'm going to try and do material about my non-binary experience, and the audience is going to be full of trans and non-people, and no one's going to laugh, and then everyone's going to know that I'm a fraud. And so I like properly got into my head, and it was the first time that I had written any non-binary material, and it genuinely is the set that I was going to say the set that I've most cared about in my entire life. I went through basically the exact same experience performing material about being autistic for the first time, which I did in lockdown earlier this year, and it was like the same thing. But anyway, like it was such a big deal for me to go on stage and talk about that on stage for the first time. And then like it was genuinely magic. Like people liked my set. I met a bunch of people after. It was really nice. And now it's, I'm writing a show which is mostly about that, and mostly like building on that 5-minute set that I wrote. So it's been a really good experience for me, both as a performer, but also kind of using it as a way of exploring my kind of gender and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really heartwarming story. I really enjoyed that. I don't know. I've certainly had. I don't think I've not had a gig like that since coming out as non-binary, but I definitely remember like a kind of penny drop moment when I was invited to do a show for the Queer Alternative in London back in 2015. I want to say it was like a cabaret show. One of the weirdest lineups I've ever been on. I was after a burlesque act and before a sword swallower, and when I don't know if you've ever done like, I mean, like you mentioned, you kind of touched on it before with the talent show, when you're doing comedy on a variety bill, where like you suddenly, like, because I like to think I'm quite an alternative act, but in that environment, I'm basically fucking, I've literally cannot
My
name
worst
a mainstream
one
comedian.
is
I'm really bad at this now. Yeah, go on.
I did a gig where they booked comedians and they booked magicians, but all the magicians that they booked were close hand magicians, and so they arrived and were like, no, we don't want a stage, we don't want a show, and they were like, fine, no one will have a stage, no one will have a set time. And so they wanted us as comedians to do like the comedy equivalent of close hand magic and just kind of like be in the room telling jokes to people.
Oh, that sounds...
Which is why variety people, like variety shows, should not be allowed to be run by people who do not do comedy and other things.
No, absolutely
anyway,
not.
That's a run at the time. Please tell me about your experience doing the...
Oh, no, yeah, it was one of those, like, so yeah, I was already out as bisexual, but I hadn't had a gender epiphany at that point. I was still kind of presenting quite femme, but I didn't know non-binary was a thing, and I was like, well, I don't want an operation, so clearly I can't be trans. All that kind of bollocks, which I've grown out of since. But yeah, it was just one of those things where, like, where like the moment from the moment I got on stage and started doing it, and like all the kind of queer bits I was doing that had got like the odd laugh at other open mic nights really started landing, and then just sort of being sort of like, oh, okay, I belong here. These are my people. And then off the back of that, doing Bar Whatever, which is another queer cabaret night, the Royal Vauxhall Tavern, like getting off the back of that, getting booked to do a paid headline spot at that, with like 30 quid. I think all the acts are paid the same, but I was the one who was on last and was on the posters, and it was like, I was definitely not ready to do a headline set at that point, but yeah, it was just that a real epiphany, and yeah, from that point I've kind of not looked back, and it's always really nice to hear other people's stories,
yeah,
about that kind of thing.
yeah, the first time
that's what I hope Blizzard is for people as well.
Yeah, when you're doing a joke and you think, does the joke not work? Then you do it to a queer audience, then it does. I did when I did Edinburgh Fringe in 2008. We did a science show where it was all like, it was just like a bunch of science comedians. We all did half an hour, and then we kind of like did the timetable so that, you know, everyone had like a week run, but then we were all like paired up with different people, so you'd come see like a bunch of comedians. And I did that joke that I mentioned earlier about like sports person, but it's actually talking about, it was basically, when before I came out, my uncle was like, you know, I obviously have nothing against gay people, but I wouldn't like it if my child was gay. Like, if they came out to me, I would still, like, I wouldn't disown them, but I would know it if my children were not gay, because it's so hard being gay. And so it was that my uncle said, but about sports people, like, I would still love and support my child if they were a sports person, but that's not the life I choose for my kid. And I performed that joke every night for a week to like polite laughter. And then I did Sean Davies's comedy quiz at Edinburgh Fringe. It was the last night of the Fringe, and the show was at like midnight. And I finished my gig, and then I didn't know anyone in Edinburgh, and the person that I was in the split bill with, like, who already gone home to bed. Sure. And so I basically went and sat outside the venue in the rain for an hour and a half waiting for the show to start. And then I did that joke, and the whole place erupted, and I was like, it wasn't the joke the whole week. It wasn't the joke. No. It was the audience.
It was the audience,
okay. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. We've gone for about an hour now, so I guess we'll start wrapping this up. This is potentially a big question, so I'm gonna I just kind of want a quick answer to this one, but I'm just curious because like you've obviously done a few solo shows now. I'm just wondering, like, how you go about writing them. Do you like have an idea to write about, or do you just start writing stuff and then sort of pick a show theme from there?
Ones that I've done so far have been like, they've been more like parody lectures than they have.
Right, yeah.
So it was, let's write a show about queer language. And then the second one that I did, which was the unifying thing, was it was basically a riff on the scientific research that says that gay parents, same-sex parents, or queer parents make bad parents. Well, it was like a little bit of a talk about the literature behind that and why it's bad, and then to kind of turn it around, let's do some experiments to see how good parents scientists are. Oh no, they're actually terrible parents, keep them away from your children. And so like you've got like a natural format there that you're kind of satirizing, whereas the show that I'm working on at the moment is a lot different, because this is my first, what I would consider to be like a conventional comedy show, where I'm trying to, this will be my next year, hopefully will be my Edinburgh debut. So it's going to be my first proper comedy, 50-minute to an hour type thing. And it has been a lot more stressful, because I love structure. It is my favorite thing about comedy writing, getting the right structure, because I'm not using an existing structure, and that is not, if you write a set and you're doing a satire of an existing structure, then your entire set is a joke, because the structure that you're using is a joke, and then literally everything that you say is funny is a punchline where the setup is your structure. And I don't have that. And so what the work around this show has been is working out what the structure of the show is, so that it like has a narrative flow. It doesn't feel rushed, but it also doesn't feel too slow. And it's horrible, and I hate it. It's actually a very stressful experience. But that's So I don't really have an approach for this one. I have like a lot of things that I want to say, and I'm working with a director who is like helping me with it. A very funny comedian called Jos Norris, who
Jos is great.
was comedian 2019. And on the one hand, there's a lot more freedom, and I'm getting to write lots of like experiment with lots of forms, and that's really like exciting and fun. But on the other hand, still don't have a structure that I'm happy with, so that's rubbish. That's my final thought.
What a note to end on. That's fine. Yeah, just one more quick question. Definitely, I would be interested to explore that further, but we've been on for an hour already, so I'll.
Sorry, I talk quite a lot about.
That's fine. I'm at least half the reason why this has happened. So yeah, just as a kind of wrap up question, what advice would you give to a younger you about to start stand up?
I think that I enjoy the place that I am now, and I think now than I was when I was younger, because I'm a very different person. Like post coming out, I think I have a much clearer like comedic voice now, and I have a lot more interesting things to say and to write jokes about. And so I don't really regret that it's taken me kind of like this very long way of getting into stand-up, where I've kind of like dabbled a bit, given it up, dabbled a bit, given it up, dabbled a bit, given it up. But I would probably say to myself, like, why don't you go and talk to some actual comedians and ask them how they got into comedy? Because you are not very good at networking, but if you start now, then you'll get a lot more out of it. And also, don't do a PhD in computer science, do a PhD in something that you're actually interested in, like go and do philosophy or something like that. You'll have a much nicer time. But yeah, I think like potentially I would have told myself to like properly commit and actually work out how the system works, because I've never tried to take the system on its own terms. I've just done the comedy that I want to do. And it means that when you come to like being like, this is the thing that I want to do full time, it's much harder because you don't have any of the contacts, you don't have any of the network. And I'm super lucky. Like I have an agent now who's really supportive, and I don't really to be in the position that I'm in at the moment, because I like can't do any of the stuff that you need to do to make yourself like career successful in comedy, like the networking and the understanding which gear to do and doing the competitions and things like that. I find that very stressful and very horrible. But if I could make my 19, 20-year-old self go and have already done that for me, that would be lovely. So that's what I would tell myself to do.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a really nice answer. I really like that. I don't know if I've had anyone sort of say before that kind of like, because I think it's very true. I think that like as much as I kind of cringe at a lot of my earlier stuff and approaches to writing and comedy, I think it was all kind of necessary. So it's nice to kind of have a kind of uplifting piece of advice where you're like, oh yeah, no, I did everything right, but also stop being a shy prick and talk to actual comedians. I like it. Just to paraphrase you there. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for watching.
It was much nice.
Yep. I'll just pop your socials in the chat for anyone who wants to go follow you. There we are. Yep, so you can follow them on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, which are all in the Twitch chat. They've also got a website you can have a look at as well. You can't follow them on that, though. That's not how websites work. Wonderful, yeah.
You can sign up to my newsletter.
You can sign up to a newsletter, though. Actually, yeah, no, I'm wrong. You can follow, but it's go do that. Go sign up to the newsletter, and then when they are in your area, you will be newsed. So thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you very much for watching. We will see you all later. Bye bye.